Is this not why you are here? Get down.
Welcome to the Touch MBA Admissions Podcast. Do you need help figuring out which schools to apply to or how to get into the world's top MBA programs? Hey, you're not alone. Join thousands of others on this podcast and on our site, touchmba.com, as they seek the admissions edge. And now, here's your host, Darren Joe.
Are you not entertained? Welcome to the Touch MBA podcast. This is your host, Darren, and I'm just trying to spice up the intro this week because we're having our first Australian business school on the show. Russell Crowe is Australian. That's one of my all-time favorite movie scenes from Gladiator. But here at Touch MBA, we're all about helping you find the best MBA program for you. How about getting your MBA in one of the world's most livable cities, Melbourne, Australia, and at the country's top university, the University of Melbourne? Well, this week, Edward Cook, who is Director of MBA Programs at Melbourne Business School, joins the show to talk about why, for some of you, getting this one-year intimate international MBA in Melbourne, Australia might be a good idea. But before we get to this week's episode, if you need admissions advice and you're looking for some B-School recommendations, that's what we do here at Touch MBA. So you can go to our site, touchmba.com, get yourself signed up, tell us a bit more about yourself, and we'd be glad to help you out for free. Let's get straight to this week's episode. Today, we are speaking with our first Australian MBA program. In fact, I believe it was the first MBA program in Australia, the Melbourne Business School MBA, and it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Edward Cook, who is the Director of MBA Programs at Melbourne Business School, to join us here on the Touch MBA podcast. Welcome to the show, Ed.
Thanks, Darren. Thanks very much for having me on the show.
Ed, you really have a long history with Melbourne Business School. Could you give us a bit of your professional background?
Okay, sure. So I'm from the UK originally, as maybe you can tell from my accent, and I moved to Australia in 2001. Prior to that, I worked in investment banking in London, have traveled a lot as a child. I lived in Hong Kong and Brunei and places like that. So living overseas was always something I wanted to do. So I moved to Australia in 2001, met my now wife in 2002. And when I was working here, I worked in talent acquisition or recruitment in-house and for an agency consulting. And then I started studying my MBA here in 2007. And about 6 months later, I started working in the Careers Centre, managing the relationship that the school has with the consulting industry. So firms like McKinsey, BCG, EY, PwC, Deloitte, helping students who wanted to go into consulting industry, which I suppose an MBA is the kind of natural precursor to a career in consulting, and manage relationship and advise students on careers within that area. I then left MBS in 2010, having just graduated and having worked there for 3 years. I did my own thing for about 2 years, social media consulting, and then I came back 4 months ago to be program director of the MBA program, working to sort of continue to improve the product or the service that we provide, or the MBA experience we provide to students from all over the world.
Ed, could you tell us what makes the Melbourne MBA unique from other top business schools?
I suppose a number of reasons. I mean, the fact it's based in Melbourne, obviously, that makes it unique. But Melbourne's a very multicultural, but also very livable city. So in the Economist Intelligence Unit, it wins along with Vancouver. Melbourne and Vancouver sort of vie for top position in terms of livability, if that's a term. So that's one of the main, being based here, close to the city centre, part of a vibrant, multicultural, mid-sized, sort of 4 million people city on the periphery of Asia. Also, the fact that we're part owned by corporate Australia. So it was set up, as you rightly said, as the first Australian MBA by corporate Australia to provide leadership education to Australian business people. And it's also partially owned by the University of Melbourne, top 30, top 35 ranked universities in the world, depending on which rankings you look at. So all the degrees that are conferred by Melbourne Business School, they're conferred by University of Melbourne. And we have just formed part of the Faculty of Business and Economics, which is part of the University of Melbourne, and we're part of that broader faculty. So the opportunity for collaboration between other faculties within the University of Melbourne are definitely increasing. Faculty of Engineering, Faculty of Dentistry, we look exploring joint ventures with them to provide business education as well as a specialist education. So those factors, I suppose, in my opinion, make it stand out.
And how do Melbourne Business School's corporate owners, what role do they play in the school?
They have board representation for. I mean, they funded the startup of the school in the 1950s, but there's we have a number of senior executives who are on the board who provide. And I suppose the fact that we have a lot of part-time students that are studying from those organizations continue that kind of relationship, and a lot of our full-time students end up working for those institutions. So they don't provide ongoing funding, but they provided the seed funding as kind of founder members, I suppose, if you want to use that term, to the business school when it was set up.
Got it. And how big is the full-time class?
At this stage, we have one intake. They've started about 3 months ago, and there were 53 people in that intake, which you get to know everyone well, rather than being within an intake of say 400 people, where cliques will form purely by the size of the intake. So we really manage very carefully who comes into the program to make sure that cliques don't form, and you get that kind of multicultural experience throughout the 12 months that you're here.
Is MBS known for any particular discipline?
Yeah. Again, from my experience from studying here, if you're going to pick one, I mean, of course, it's an MBA, so it's a broad general management qualification, but probably marketing and finance would be the two areas that stand out. We've got a very strong marketing faculty, both full-time faculty, but also adjunct faculty who come in and teach around the world. And a popular option is to do an MBA plus a master's in marketing, so get a double degree. You have to do 6 more subjects on top of the MBA to get a master's in marketing. Maybe my view is slightly biased, but from the feedback I get from people I speak to, marketing is one of the strongest kind of areas of MBS.
Well, yeah, and I think the main question most candidates will have with a school like Melbourne is, why should I get my MBA in Australia and in Melbourne when there's options in Singapore, Hong Kong, US, UK? Yeah, why Australia?
Well, the two main reasons are the size of the class. So it's small, it's intimate, everyone knows each other. We get to know you, the academics get to know you. It's not a massive class sitting in front of a lecture theatre. It's very interactive. But also, if you take an American, for example, who's interested in getting some exposure to Asia, but maybe doesn't want to jump in the deep end of studying in, I don't know, Shanghai or Singapore is maybe not such much of a culture shock, but they want to get on the periphery of Asia, but dip their toe in the water and see what it's like. They might never have traveled, outside of the US, for example. So for them, it's very appealing. And also for Asian students, I suppose the fact that University of Melbourne's got a very strong brand in Asia. A lot of undergraduate students study at the University of Melbourne from various Asian countries. So, and also they're interested in getting that, I suppose, Western perspective. So it can kind of fill both roles, the Western way of doing business, but located on the periphery of Asia, I suppose, is why Melbourne and Australia is important. And Australia is a wealthy country that hasn't been impacted as much by the kind of global financial crisis, that has benefited a lot from growth in Asia from a resources perspective. So again, it's an exciting phase for Asia, and I suppose Australia is well positioned to benefit from that continued growth within Asia.
And do most of your full-time students end up staying in Australia after they get their degree to work, or do many of them head back to their home countries or elsewhere in Asia?
I'd say of the current, if I look at the current class, there's 53 of them. 40% of them have got a class as domestic students, so they're Australian citizens or they have Australian permanent residency. Of the 60% of international students, I'd say half stay in Australia and half go back. it's possible to get working visa rights for Australia, but I suppose the main bit of advice I give people is if you're interested, it's worth investing the $5,000 or whatever. I think that's what it costs to look at permanent residency early on, so that by the time you finish your MBA, the visa process has run its course.
In terms of how the student visa works in Australia, how long can full-time students stay under that student visa and in Australia, and what's the process? Yeah.
Well, it's just a month after graduation, which doesn't sound much. And that's why I was saying it's important that students, when they come here, if they're at all interested in staying in Australia, that they start looking at the visa process early on, because it's not impossible, but it does take time. But if you're in the process and you get a bridging visa, that gives you the work rights of the visa you're applying for. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what number of students obtain permanent residency while studying, but a lot of the international students I speak to are in the process of applying for permanent residency. So, yeah, and again, it's a very multicultural place. So there are people from all over the world, living here. And I suppose Melbourne, if you compare Melbourne to maybe Sydney, Melbourne's probably less transient from an international or from a overseas visitor perspective. People tend to come here and live here, whereas in Sydney, people tend to go there and they may move every 2 years because they're working with an international company or something like that. So that's how the two, I suppose, major cities in Australia differ, amongst other factors as well.
And I mean, Ed, just a personal question for you as a graduate of the Melbourne MBA program. I mean, what was the biggest benefit that you got from the program, looking back at your time?
I suppose it's sort of the opportunity to look at what you're interested in, where your skills are, how you think you might be good at a particular thing, but is that actually the case? It's a kind of an opportunity to sort of remove yourself from the workforce. Just talking about the full-time one, remove yourself from the workforce and really reassess where you're at with your career, how you've got to where you are at this particular stage, where you want to go in the future, and look at what you're interested in, where your skills gaps are. How do you start addressing those gaps and filling those gaps? And the MBA is kind of the start of that process, which you then can continue for the rest of your career because you've increased that level of self-awareness and ability to reflect on your current situation and how you want to achieve your next kind of career goal, for example. I mean, I did mine on a part-time basis, so it was a little bit different, I suppose, but getting exposure, because it's a broad generalist degree, getting exposure to a range of different things and discovering something that you never even considered before, but actually you quite enjoy. And I suppose marketing is something that I suppose that's something that I identified as something that I was interested in and developed a greater understanding of.
And have you been quite active in the alumni network?
Yeah, I mean, from my social media activity, I love networking. I love meeting new people. I love, and I like connecting people within my network. So if I meet people, I will constantly be thinking about who can I introduce you to within my network, so that you'll sort of benefit from the interaction. So I am very active, and we work with students. I'm running actually at 4:45 today, running a workshop, which would be a weekly workshop for the full-time course on how they can start to position their personal brand on social media, how they start to research a network, and how they start to engage that network, but also contribute to the network rather than just take from it. So I think networking, and whereas maybe in the US networking comes naturally, I think that down here, for example, we need to try and convince all the full-time students of the importance of it, but doing it well, not just doing it for their own benefit, but doing it to give back to the network as well as receive something from it.
Yeah, and the Melbourne Business School alumni network is quite active outside of Australia as well.
It is. Yeah, we recently held, on the 12th of September, we held a global alumni celebration. It was I think there were 44 cities that events were held in across the world. So, I mean, the thing to do is, if you get on LinkedIn and do a search for Melbourne Business School in a particular city you're interested in, you can see the kind of the alumni with that business school, so within that city. And I think that if you're based in the States or Singapore or Hong Kong, and you're considering doing an MBA here, definitely be worth reaching out to an alum and just talking to them about the experience that they had, so you can make sure you make the right kind of choice.
Absolutely. LinkedIn has made it so much easier to connect with MBA alumni.
Exactly, yeah.
So if we could now turn our attention to the admissions process at MBS,
Yep.
What type of candidate are you looking for your full-time program?
Our strapline in our marketing is the global business leaders, and I suppose that really sums up quite well who we look for. So a fit both ways. So we don't want to have a conversation 10 months or 6 months into a full-time MBA program where someone's made the wrong decision to come here. That's kind of vital. So being totally honest with people in terms of what an MBA and MBS will give you and what it won't. Someone who's got a global perspective. So if people who've traveled or expressed an interest in or worked in a range of different countries or are keen to do so in the future. Someone who has a diverse range of interests. Someone who has got high potential in terms of future career progression, and sort of finally has displayed leadership, has played a leadership role in their community, business, or a club or something they've been involved with. So I think those are the kind of things we look for when we're looking for candidates, or when people apply for us, when we're screening people.
How would you advise a candidate to show that he or she has a diverse range of interests?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose on a CV, most people have, an interest section. We ask 4 questions of people when they apply for I think it changes. There's a rotation of questions we ask. So I suppose just talking about those in the application process, and maybe getting a referee from some work referees, maybe getting someone from another organization or someone that someone's involved with from a more community-based referee to give that kind of perspective outside of just the work environment.
And does MBS have a minimum GMAT score?
Yeah, the minimum GMAT is currently 570. The average is 670 at this stage. It's sort of been creeping up, aiming to increase that a little bit, but the school's average currently for the current intake 670 with a minimum of 570. And that also plays an important part in the admissions process. Not to say that if you've only got a 570 GMAT, of course we'll consider your application, but we'll be looking for other things as well. And we also, with people with high GMATs, if they spend months on end just working and studying for their GMAT, probably going to be the wrong fit for the school as well.
Yes, and are you looking for a balance in terms of like the verbal and quantitative score? So maybe scores in the 90th percentile for math, but only the 50th percentile for verbal.
The admissions team make the sort of decisions of based on the GMATs, but I look at the total score. I suppose being an MBA, quantitative is probably the score you'd sort of focus more attention on. But if English isn't someone's first language as well, you don't expect them to get as high in the verbal or what's the other one, the written one as well. So you probably make allowances for that, depending on where they're from.
Great. And so I noticed you have 4 deadlines for your August intake. And so do candidates have a better chance if they apply earlier?
Not of getting a position, but probably a better chance of getting scholarships if they apply earlier. There's a range of scholarships we offer students, and I suppose we look to allocate those scholarships based on the people as they are accepted into the program. So it's worthwhile getting your application in if you're interested in early, because you've got a better chance of being considered for a wider range of scholarships.
And I'll definitely link to your page where you have all the scholarships listed. I noticed you had some scholarships for candidates from certain geographies as well.
Regions.
Regions, yeah. To encourage diversity. So I'll definitely link to that page in the show notes. And I guess finally,
Excellent, thanks.
What 3 things can applicants do to improve their chances of getting into a school like yours?
Well, so practice GMAT, but that's not the only thing. Get involved with your local community. Don't just focus on your own career and your own progression. Try to give back and get involved with sort of the local community and demonstrate that when you're applying for the for the MBA at MBS, have taken or worked your way towards taking a leadership position, whether it's your at your undergrad level, whether it's something you're involved with in kind of extracurricular kind of activities, whether it's within your work, starting something new, being a kind of entrepreneur within an organization. And finally, I suppose having a global perspective. I mean, if you're from outside Australia and you're looking to do an MBA in Australia, I suppose that's a first sign of having an interest in somewhere different, somewhere outside of your home country. Because it's such a multicultural classroom, and because I always get a lot of satisfaction seeing people from different cultures who would never really have the opportunity to work together if they stayed within their home country, really forming close bonds and close friendships between countries that generally maybe don't get on in the wider world. So yes, this having a global perspective and being open to exploring how other people do things rather than just only being able to see it from your perspective.
Great. So there's some great tips there. So just to sum that up, show that you can contribute to the community at MBS and that you have contributed to your community right now where you are. Show leadership potential and initiative and that you have a global perspective.
Exactly. Yeah.
So in terms of financing, could you let us know what percentage of your class gets scholarships and what your average scholarship amounts are?
Yeah. I was speaking to the admissions team about this the other day. I mean, it's difficult to put an actual figure on it because it changes every intake. Scholarship amounts. It varies from everything being paid, scholarships down to 10-20% of the overall fees. So it very much, and it depends on the kind of people that apply for the program as well. So there's a lot of different factors. I can't kind of put a specific kind of figure on it. Percentages of that again, it also depends on it's a demand and supply kind of play, I suppose, as well. But there are domestic, as you said, there are regional scholarships. So again, it depends on who applies from which geographic locations, as well as the likelihood of getting scholarships. But you just tick off everyone's considered for a scholarship during the application process. So it's worthwhile putting in an application and seeing what the kind of outcome is from a scholarship perspective. Other loans, so Australian citizens can use something called fee help, which means the government kind of pays, and people from overseas sometimes have other ways of financing their studies. Stafford loans from the US, for example. Most US students who study here have government support from the United States. So it really depends on where you're from as to what financial support options there are open to you.
Right now I'm living in Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam, and a lot of Vietnamese MBA candidates would love to apply to Australia or just any top business school really, but cost is a big issue for them. So if you were to have a bunch of college seniors or recently graduated university students in front of you from Vietnam, and they were asking, well, how can I give my best chance for getting a scholarship, when I apply for an MBA 4 years down the road, what would you tell them?
I suppose it will go back to, GMAT score is important. We're looking for career potential or career progression. So, and also, I suppose, why are you looking to do an MBA? A lot of people, I want to do an MBA, but they don't have a kind of strong reason for what they want to get out of it. And they haven't done enough research as to what it's going to give them, and also what it isn't going to give them from a skills perspective. So, positioning yourself maybe over the next 3 to 4 years in terms of my, 6, 7, 8 year career goal. How does an MBA fit into this? Where am I going to position myself over the next 3 years? If I do a GMAT and I don't get such a good result, how am I going to prepare myself better if I'm going to retake it and do it again? From a local, as I said before, community perspective, what am I getting involved with? Am I involved with any charities? Am I fundraising for a school project or a range of different things you can think of? So just all those kind of things, just putting really what I was talking about before, I suppose, and how people improve their chances of admissions. The scholarship is the one step. You get accepted. A scholarship is someone who goes that bit further in terms of what we're looking for.
And in terms of career opportunities for MBS graduates, how are MBAs viewed in Australia?
Australian businesses, I suppose there's a term in Australia called tall poppy syndrome. So if you get too big for your boots or too, ideas above your station or whatever you want to describe it as, and there's nothing to back it up, you're going to get cut down at the knees. So I think it's about, in Australia, an MBA in Australia is about combining it with your experience. So if you turned up to a company post graduation and you said, I want to work at, ANZ or National Australia Bank or a company, and they say, oh, why is that? And you say, because I've just graduated with an MBA. The response might be, well, so what? So I think it's about combining your experience with your MBA and not expecting the MBA to be a silver bullet that gets you that, perfect job post graduation. Someone described to me quite well an MBA in Australia. It's like a par 5 golf hole. You tee off and you hit the ball towards the hole. As long as it's heading in the right direction, it might take you 3 or 4 years to get that job. And I suppose if you haven't got local experience, it might be lowering your expectations. So then you get the local experience, you've got the MBA, you've got the relevant experience, so that a job 2 years from now will be the one that enables your career to really kind of take off. So combining it with experience, which some international students from specific countries, do struggle with that a bit, because in some countries education is everything, but in Australia that's not the case. It's very much combined with experience.
Interesting. So you definitely have to present your case, right, to future employers about how your past experience combined with your MBA would really help the company. But what's in it for them? What's the value you add? What's the value you add? But the MBA degree in general, if you're already an outstanding candidate and plus you have that MBA, does that help?
For some people it does. I mean, it very much depends on who's looking at your application, I suppose. But I suppose by doing an MBA here, you get access to a very large network. So you can start to leverage that. You can start to leverage that network of MBS alumni in the workplace. And it's probably the benefits kick in when you get more senior, because if you don't get a postgraduate qualification in Australia, eventually you're going to start to hit a ceiling or potentially be overlooked for a certain job because you haven't got that experience. So again, it's important maybe to get enough experience before you do an MBA, or if you have got 3 or 4 years experience, you've got to be patient that the kind of benefits it might take 2 or 3 years to kick in post MBA.
Great. Yeah. And how do you prepare your international students? I know you were very involved with this process before. In terms of looking for jobs in Australia, and what can they do to prepare during their time? As I said earlier, I'm running this LinkedIn course, or showing how people how to position their brand and network and research and network using social media. It's really start really early in terms of where do you want to stay in Australia? Which area do you want to work? Are you a career changer? Are you looking to stay in the same career line? And starting to build that network on maybe not day 1, but day 30, for example. So start early is kind of the key thing. We've got people out there networking on behalf of the students. There are loads of events that go on. There's a wine tasting event run by Treasury Wine Estates happening this Friday, which is wine tasting, but also some senior managers are going to be around to talk to people who are interested in a career at Treasury Wine Estates in the future. There's companies coming on campus. There's events that are run off campus where people can go along. There's an alumni dinner I went to last Thursday, which is another kind of networking event. We provide one-on-one tailored career coaching throughout the 12-month MBA program to make sure that when the first person finishes, they know what they want to do. They're able to articulate that, and they can go out and start performing well in interviews to get that job that that meets their pre-MBA expectations. And do MBS full-time students do internships?
Yes, that's an opportunity. There's how it works. There's 3 core modules: General Management 1, General Management 2, and General Management 3. And then the final half of the 12-month program is filled with 3 things. You can't do all 3, but there are internships, which is generally between 1 month and 3 months long, exchange. So going overseas to a US school or an Asian school and doing between a 1 month and a 3 month exchange program, and electives is where you kind of start to specialize within a particular area that you're interested in. So, I mean, exchange is difficult with a 12-month program. I've just been managing it recently. I suppose they're going to be, of the 53, about 6 people are going on exchange. It's open to part-time students as well. Internships, I'd say 30 of them will do internships. That could be paid, it could be unpaid, it could be obviously pro bono, it could be working in the not-for-profit space, it could be working in consulting, it could be working, there's a range of different options, and the careers people are out there almost acting like recruitment consultants, finding opportunities and then pitching them and also the students to the companies. And a lot of those internships lead to full-time employment as well at the end of the MBA program.
Got it. That's crystal clear. And so what is the best way for prospects to contact MBA students and alumni aside from LinkedIn?
Probably going through the admissions team here. If you start your application, it really is about sending a CV to the admissions team. They will look at your background and put you in touch with an alumni who's got a similar background that you can have a conversation with. That's probably the best way of going about it, or approaching people through LinkedIn.
Yeah, and that email is study@mbs.edu.
That's right.
Yes. To
yes.
submit the CV. So those of you listening, if you'd like to see if you're a good fit for MBS, be sure to send the admissions office your CV and get in touch with some students and alumni. So I guess, Ed, is there anything else about the Melbourne MBA that you just wish more candidates knew about?
It's probably getting people to consider Australia as a place to study an MBA. I suppose an MBA as a qualification is quite linked to the United States. So just considering Australia as a place as a good place to study an MBA. I suppose the linkage to University of Melbourne is a key differentiator as well. And the fact it's an intimate school. If you want to go to a large school and study with an intake of sort of 600 people, that's not going to be happening here, but you'll get kind of lost in the crowd. Whereas here, if you want to form friends for sort of life and be in a really close-knit team and work in a very supportive kind of environment, and be cliched thing, but more than just a number, that's I suppose where MBS kind of stands out.
Great. And I guess to close the show, Ed, how would you describe the Melbourne MBA in 140 characters or less?
Oh yeah, I was trying to think of this. Well, I've given away what our kind of strapline is around global business leaders. So you could maybe say global business leaders learning within an intimate, multicultural environment.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Is that more than 140?
My mental calculator says yes.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks very much for having me.
Thanks so much.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Touch MBA podcast. Don't be shy. We have a mailing list. Go to touchmba.com and get yourself signed up. And we'll keep you posted with the best tips and insider interviews on how to get into your #1 school. You can also find us on Twitter and Facebook at Touch MBA. See you soon.